LAWsome by Consultwebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another LAWsome Podcast episode where today we're going to explore the intersection of technology and law. And I'm happy to have a leading expert in that field today. Thrilled to have Tom Askeroth on the call. He's a distinguished trial lawyer specializing in workers' compensation and personal injury at Claggett & Sykes law firm. Tom brings a wealth of knowledge and firsthand experience in leveraging artificial intelligence to revolutionize legal practices. So in this episode, we're going to dive deep into how AI is not just a tool of convenience, but a transformative force reshaping the legal landscape. We're going to uncover the specific AI technologies that Tom has integrated into his work, practicing law, and how these tools enhance the efficacy of legal proceedings and ultimately their impact on client outcomes. Additionally, we're going to reflect on the recent Whitefish, Montana conference hosted by the Workers' Injury Law and Advocacy Group, otherwise known as WILLIG, where both Tom and I had the honor of presenting together on a similar topic of AI and law. Our focus during the conference really delved into the ethical integration of AI practices, especially in the legal field, but also in marketing. And this discussion was not only about the capabilities of AI, but also covered some of the critical ethical dimensions, ensuring that as we adopt these advanced technologies that we're all seeing around us, that we remain guided by the principles of justice and equity. Extremely important. So today, again, excited about this. Join us as we delve into these topics with Tom. We learn from his experiences and we gain insights into the future of AI in the legal field, artificial intelligence. Whether you're a legal professional curious about AI or just simply fascinated by evolving technology, this conversation promises to both inspire and to enlighten. So with all that said, Tom, thanks for joining the show. Very happy to have you.
Thanks, Tanner. It's really good to be here with you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Good deal. So let's jump in. This is a hot topic. I mean, it just seems like everywhere we look, the concept of AI and how it's going to change our lives, change our businesses, change our habits, it's all around us. So this is clearly something that it's important. We want to know more about it. And I've seen you personally just, I think, very well ahead of your time in this. You've, at least from my experience and what I've observed of you, you've been one of the few in the legal industry that has really charged forward with this type of technology, which I applaud that. So maybe if you would, let's start by you just giving an overview of how you kind of first started in to integrating AI, what led you into exploring this there at the firm of Claggett & Sykes. What drove that move?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate you mentioning justice and equity because that's really what it's all about, leveraging these tools, legal technology, artificial intelligence, automation. It's really about justice and equity. And kind of going back a little bit, thought about a lot about this. What kind of inspired me to get involved and be interested in artificial intelligence and legal technology in general. And I've always had a special place in my heart for the underdog. I don't know if you've seen Tanner. You may be too young for this, but you've probably seen it. The movie The Karate Kid came out in 1984.
Of course.
Yeah, not the new one, the old one, 1984. I was 4 years old when it came out, and I remember it really well because I really related with the main character in that movie, Danny LaRusso. He was raised by a single mom. I was raised by a single mom. He moved around a lot. He moved to a new city. I moved around a lot when I was a kid. Had a hard time making friends. He was like really the underdog in that story. And I probably watched the movie like a million times. And you're probably thinking, what does Karate Kid have to do with legal tech? Well, if you look in that movie, Danny LaRusso, he's having a hard time. He's getting picked on by the bullies. He's can't make any friends. He's getting beat up. And along comes Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi, he teaches him the Miyagi-Do style of karate. He doesn't have a lot of time to teach him, but he teaches him the basics, boils it down to the essentials. The wax on, wax off. Remember that?
That's right.
Yeah, the basics. And then he ends up, He ends up defending himself, wins the All Valley Championship, becomes a great story of the underdog. And, there's underdogs in our legal system too, going up against big corporations, insurance companies. And I've always represented injured workers and victims in my practice because I've just always been a fan of the underdog. And I really think that, plaintiffs, injured victims, claimants in the workers' comp system, they are the underdogs. They have limited resources. They're going up against these large corporations and insurance companies. So I'm always looking for a way to even the playing field, looking for that Miyagi-Do type technique that can, help me help my clients, these underdogs, even the playing field, like the Karate Kid movie. And, I found that technology in automation, can really even the playing field, and legal technology and artificial intelligence really caught my eye when it came out, because I'm always kind of looking for something that can bridge that gap. I have a large docket of workers' compensation cases, so by necessity, I'm looking for efficiency hacks. Not shortcuts, but trying to find the things that will help me, boil things down to the essential, what's going to help me automate and leverage tech to help my many clients go up against these large companies. There's a workers' comp law firm in town that has over 40 lawyers. They have tons of resources. So I'm always looking for these hacks, to help my clients. And I realized that, about the time ChatGPT 3.5 was released to the public in 2022, that it really got my attention, because it's something that, I can see will help even the playing field and improve, like you said, justice and equity, improve access to justice for litigants who maybe don't have the resources that the large law firms have, or, these large companies have. And I've always kind of been interested in AI, but AI hasn't really been available to the public until, ChatGPT released the 3.5 version in 2022. And AI's been around for a long time. You and I talked about this at the conference. It's been there. Like the chess playing AI and Watson, the algorithms behind like Netflix and the email spam folder, language recognition. AI's been around for a long time, but it's always kind of been like a narrow AI. It only accomplishes one very minor task. And the great thing about ChatGPT and these other large language models is they're generalists. They're good at a lot of different things, not just narrow, tasks. And what they're really good about is human-like writing and dialogue, and processing lots of information and knowledge, summarizing it, and then creating responses that very much feel like a human writing. And that's a lot what lawyers do. It's a lot what we do is process information and write. And so that, I could see early on that ChatGPT and these large language models are going to really help us along the way. So ever since then, I've been trying to learn as much as I can about artificial intelligence, because I think it will really help the underdogs in the legal justice system, and it'll help me be a better attorney in representing, these underdogs.
It makes a ton of sense. I mean, how many years have you been? You mentioned ChatGPT, so obviously that's just been released for a couple of years now. Was that really the first start into it, or were you testing and playing with some other tools prior to that?
Yeah, prior to that, it was really hard to get access to tools unless you were kind of in the technology, the tech sector, and so I would try, as much as I could. There's always like, Grammarly and tools like that kind of have an underlying AI component or machine learning component to them that were out there before. And I played with those tools, but it really wasn't until ChatGPT came along that I was like, oh, great, this is going to be available to the public. There's definitely challenges that come with that. But, I still think, Tanner, we're in the early stages of AI. It's like Henry Ford just invented the Model T in 1908, and we've got, 100 years of development still to go. But it's hard to imagine what it's going to be. Maybe we're even before the Model T, the steam engine or something, but we're very, very early in the process.
and that change will be exponential as well, right? I mean, in terms of the time, just referencing back to the car, or the automobile, but yeah, this technology will be exponential in terms of what it'll change. But the reason I brought up the timeline is that you've clearly been a tech guy, we'll say, for a long time, but this technology, in terms of its availability to the public, really hasn't been around that long. And I stress that point because I think it's an encouragement to the market, that those
Right.
that are maybe still hesitant, maybe feel like it's already past them, or there's
Yeah.
all the other excuses in the world. Now is the time to start,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
everyone is learning this technology.
Absolutely. You're totally right there. We're at the early stages of the development of this technology, especially, I mean, they've been, computer engineers and scientists have been working on machine learning for a long time. But in the sense that it being available to the public to use,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in its application to the legal field, we're really in the early stages. I mean, there's a few companies out there that are leveraging AI for lawyer use and the legal field, but there's not a lot, and so if you get familiar with some of these tools now, when those tools are better developed, the legal specific type tools, you'll be ahead of the game. You'll be able to understand kind of the underlying technology, not just what you're using at the time. I think that's important.
I agree. And I mean, you started into talking about using various tools and noted ChatGPT in particular. Let's dive into that a little deeper. I mean, clearly you're in both the litigation and the client management side of the business, in PI and workers' comp. And you've likely started to really use this AI technology in more ways than just one, right? Most people see ChatGPT as a way to just turn content around in many instances, but there are unlimited ways to start to leverage this technology. Can you speak to some examples and how you've applied it to case
Sure.
case management or litigation, and then maybe even what was the outcome? How was it influenced?
Absolutely. So, like I was saying, we're in the early stages. So I've seen AI have a large impact on what I call legal adjacent areas of our job. So maybe not necessarily what's at the core of our work as attorneys. And it depends on what, there's lots of different attorneys. There's transactional attorneys, litigation attorneys. My area of my background comes from litigation. But these legal adjacent areas, I think, are what really kind of are on fire right now. And so what do I mean by that? Here's some examples. So helping attorneys understand scientific and medical articles. Artificial intelligence is really good at summarizing articles, journals, scientific and medical journals, and kind of dumbing it down for us attorneys, right? Because we're not doctors, we're not scientists, but a lot of times we're dealing with complicated medical issues, complicated scientific or science-related topics. And so what I found it really beneficial for me is almost like a research assistant, and using, whether it's ChatGPT 4.0 or Anthropic, kind of just using it as a research assistant to help me understand the topic. So I've got a couple examples. So again, I come from a workers' compensation background in Nevada. When doctors are doing the final rating evaluation for an injured worker to determine how much money they're going to get in the case, they use a book called the 5th edition, what we call the guides, put out by the American Medical Association. And it's a thick medical book that's dense and somewhat difficult and hard to understand. But with these models, a lot of them now, their context windows are so large, you can upload entire books to, ChatGPT 4.0 or Anthropic, or there's other companies out there that are specifically designed to allow you to build these chat bots on top of a specific knowledge base. Mm-hmm. So with this 5th edition chatbot that I created a chatbot, uploaded the entire 5th edition. And now when I have an injured worker who has, an injury, and I'm trying to understand how the doctor's going to do the rating for that injured worker, I can ask questions to the chatbot. And now I have an expert in my room with me, who I can ask questions. Oh, what do the guides say about rating multi-level disc injury in the lumbar spine? Like, how does the doctor go about rating that? Oh, this doctor did this. Is that the appropriate way to do a rating evaluation? Looking at their report. So just kind of like using it as a research expert. Another thing is, we get lots of medical reports. The other side, the defense, they'll hire a medical expert who will cite medical journal articles. And, I think it's important to read those, but a lot of times I read them and they go over my head, right? I don't understand it. So you can use ChatGPT to read those articles for you. You should still read them, but, read them for you, help you summarize the reports that the expert's relying on. And a lot of times you'll see that those reports that the expert's relying on don't actually support the expert's opinion. They support, maybe your position, and you can use that to create deposition questions based on that. Yeah. Things like that. Understanding complex topics. I have a case right now where I represent an injured worker who is injured by a robot, if you can believe it. And, it's talk about like Skynet. In reality, he was injured by a robot at a warehouse. And so there's a lot of complex scientific kind of information that I need to understand about, like computer vision and robotic automation and things like that I can use, use these models to help me understand that information. Like I said, almost like a research assistant. Now you still need to check to make sure that you're being given, information that's correct and accurate. But as these models progress to get better and better, their accuracy improves, is what I've been saying. And the newest models out there that are available for enterprise use for businesses are really good. Like Anthropic Claude and ChatGPT 4.0, they're really, really good at that. Other things, just briefly, deposition summaries, helping with, spotting inconsistencies and records, public record information. There's a lot of public record information out there, a lot of data that, if you wanted to really, I've got a case where I'm trying to determine if, that it's a negligence case. I'm trying to determine if the property owner should have known that the area surrounding the property was dangerous and should have hired a security guard to protect the public and the customers that would come to this property. And so, how do you find out that information? Well, there's data out there, publicly available data in my community for 911 service calls and in the community. And you pull it up, you download it online, and it's just like this giant spreadsheet, hundreds of thousands of data entry. And it would take a researcher, a paralegal, months to go through all that information. But with ChatGPT, 4.0, back then it was Code Interpreter that I was using, you can upload all of that information. You just upload the spreadsheet and then just ask questions like it was a researcher for you, You say, how many, between such and such dates, how many crimes involve violence in this area, and it knows it intuitively knows what a violent crime is. It pulls it, it creates a list. You could even go so far. What we did is we said, okay, I want a 3-mile radius around this property. I want you to tell me all of the calls for service that involve violent crimes in that area. And it used the math to like draw a a circle around the property. You can watch it go through the steps. It knows the math, and then it compared that to the data set, included all of the calls for service in that area, took out only the violent calls, and then created a graph, comparing that to like other areas in the community. And we were able to show like this area was a lot more violent, had a lot more violent crime, these calls for service for violent crime, than surrounding areas. And so, we were able to do that in a matter of like an afternoon. It would have taken a research assistant, 40, 50, maybe more hours to get through all of that information. So those kinds of things are possible. Those legal adjacent kind of things that you do as an attorney, at least in litigation, it can really help.
I want to just kind of pick your brain on this, because I think we're all using this technology in different ways, kind of looking through different lenses. As I hear you saying that, I'm a marketer. I mean, it's just my mindset, and I'm drooling over that concept of how you could create a marketing piece out of the data available to you, specific, in your case, inadequate security or inadequate lighting or whatever premises liability subtype you want to go after there with that data. It's powerful, and the sky is the limit. I'm interested, Tom, is there a framework that you're using? Is it often driven by a problem? Is it often driven by like a challenge that you're trying to overcome? How do you start into even, brainstorming or exploring what's possible with this technology?
Yeah, you just have to really spend time with it. You won't know what's possible until you use it. And then you have to really stay abreast of the new developments, because there's things I want to do with the technology that I'm not able to do today, but I know will be possible soon, right? And if I'm not aware of like the latest updates to ChatGPT or, Anthropic's moves, and their developments, I'm not going to know that these solutions are available. So it's really about staying on top of it. It's really important. So yeah, and there's a lot of different ways to stay on top of it, listening to podcasts like yours, YouTube. There's a couple people on YouTube that I follow that are really, kind of ahead of the game in terms of latest developments in AI. And, you kind of have to get out of your comfort zone, because these people aren't lawyers. They're legal tech people. A lot of them are entrepreneurs that are talking about, this technology, and you just kind of have to get out of your comfort zone and follow some of these people, listen to what they're doing. It helps if you have an interest in it too. And, I'm interested in it. I do this for fun. I play with the, AI and create chatbots for fun because I'm a nerd, but it's also really important to your business too. You need to be aware of this, because, we can talk about the disruption coming, but artificial intelligence is going to disrupt many industries, and many white collar industries, including, the legal field. There's going to be some disruption for sure.
So let's move into the challenges piece, because this is on our minds. What are you seeing right now that's disruptive? But I think more importantly, what are you anticipating into the future? What is going to be the biggest disruption in the legal space as related to this type of technology?
Yeah, so absolutely. Like I was saying, knowledge workers are going to be disrupted, and we are knowledge workers, attorneys. We work with knowledge, we work with information, we work with data. And, Goldman Sachs came out with an article not too long ago saying that they believe generative AI, which is what we're talking about, could automate almost half of all legal tasks. So, and it's going to be more disruptive in the legal industry than pretty much any other industry. And there are legal jobs that are at risk of automation. So you kind of have to think, okay, what is AI really good at? What isn't it good at? And then what can I kind of maybe develop or develop my skills in the areas where legal AI or artificial intelligence is not good at, kind of fill that gap. So I think it's going to be really highly disruptive for attorneys involved in kind of entry-level type work like document review, contract drafting and negotiation, and legal research. There's a lot of tools out there. That's kind of the first sort of early entries into artificial intelligence, where companies have developed tools specifically for attorneys. So company ClearBrief is an example. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's a legal writing platform that uses AI to kind of streamline interactive legal documents. It's a legal brief writing tool. It's actually a Word plugin, and you can upload, all of your PDFs that you have in a case. If you're a litigator and you have depositions, you have responses to written discovery, you have medical records, you can upload them to a case file and ClearBrief, and then start drafting your pleading, and it will automatically find in the documents that you uploaded, deposition transcripts, whatever it is, support for the statement that you're making in your brief, and it'll automatically cite to it. It'll create hyperlinks to your exhibits. It will create your exhibits for you. It will create your table of contents. It will create your table of authorities. So it does a lot of things that, that kind of like maybe paralegals or entry level attorneys would do for you if you were kind of making an assignment, right? Mm-hmm. It will analyze the opponent's legal brief. It will look for fake citations, which we know happens, and there was attorneys that got in trouble for that. So it will look for those. It will actually analyze your opponent's citations to determine if the case that they're citing actually supports their statement in their legal brief. It does incredible things. So, you can see how that's already going to be very disruptive, right? That's going to kind of streamline the process. And the reason why I'm excited about it is because, in the past, these huge law firms would have, dozens and dozens of attorneys doing doc review, and you're a solo attorney out there. You don't maybe have the resources that these large attorneys have, or these large law firms have, to do all that doc review. Well, now you can do that doc review with companies like ClearBrief, with Disco now as a discovery management platform that will assist with doc review as well. So, you can kind of see how, it's going to be disruptive, but it's also going to level the playing field. No, I think it's going to be less disruptive for attorneys who are client facing. And what do I mean by that? I think, it's going to be, I think clients are going to always want to have a human handling their legal matters, right? They're going to want to be able to call an attorney. They're going to want to sit down with the attorney face to face. And maybe behind the scenes, the attorney is, leveraging AI to do a lot of the work, that was maybe done by paralegals in the past. But I think that clients are always going to want to have an attorney face to talk to, a real human. And so I think it's really important for attorneys to develop those interpersonal skills, to maybe look into maybe bringing in a practice area where, they're doing like what I do, workers' compensation. It's very client facing. I think criminal defense will always be very client facing. Anything involving trials, I don't think we're going to get to the point where we have a robot, in the courtroom, prosecuting a criminal. So I think a lot of those types of cases are, hopefully we don't, but I think a lot of those types of cases and practice areas are safe. But a lot of the document drafting, transactional work, a lot of it is going to be offloaded to artificial intelligence. And, these companies that we're starting to see are already, cutting into that, and the disruption is coming, or we're at the early stages, but it certainly is coming.
Yeah, and I would agree. It's definitely the administrative type work, the repeatable tasks. Those
right.
are anything that you can build a standard operating procedure around and control the outcome. That's absolutely what's being impacted, and so I would agree fully. And so what you've given some alluded to some advice, but what would you advise our listeners? What can they start doing immediately to prepare for that major shift?
Like I said, I think first thing you need to do is, just start using the tools, get comfortable with it. Along with that, though, comes with some challenges and some warnings, and some ethical guidelines that I think, we should follow, as attorneys. There's kind of been this movement right now. A lot of the state, every state has their own kind of guidelines, ethical guidelines for their attorneys, but there's a model rules put out by the ABA that a lot of states have adopted and are following. And some of the states are now putting out, additional rules regarding artificial intelligence. And me and my partner wrote an article in the Nevada. I'm from Nevada, Las Vegas. We wrote an article in the State Bar Journal advocating that I don't think we need new rules to govern the attorney's use of artificial intelligence. I think the rules that we have in place are sufficient. We just need to make sure that we understand how those rules apply to the use of AI. right? And when I talk about ethics and artificial intelligence and the use of artificial intelligence, there's kind of like a three-pronged focus. There's the 3 Ps, we call them: privacy, proficiency, and precision. Privacy is a big deal in artificial intelligence because a lot of these companies, they're tech companies, they go on really quick. They don't necessarily worry about privacy issues or, following regulations, and they want to just kind of get out there, get their product out there as quickly as possible, dominate market share. And so a lot of them there are significant privacy concerns with some of these companies. And it's really important that if you're an attorney and you're using, ChatGPT 4.0 or Anthropic or any of these other companies that are out there that are basically built on top of either of those 2 models, or Google has Gemini, which is another one. Those are kind of the 3 main leaders, and all the companies out there that are developing tools are basically built on top of those models. But you really need to understand, as an attorney, how is the information and the data that you're providing to that AI, that model, being used after you put it in there? A lot of these models allow you to upload PDFs. They allow you to input client data and information. And you really need to read the terms and conditions of each of those models and the companies that you're using to know, is it being saved by the company after you put it in there? Is it being used to train the model? And, if you look at the privacy rules that we're governed by as attorneys, we have an ethical obligation to keep client data and information private and not put it out there. So there, a lot of these companies have various versions. There's like the free version, there's the Teams version, there's the enterprise version, and you really need to look, because each version has its own privacy terms and conditions. And the free version often, these companies, OpenAI and Anthropic, they're wanting to get as many people as they can to use them, because they can use the data and the information that they receive and the interaction with the public to train their models. So a lot of times,
that's why Google has been so successful. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of these models, the free versions, they're being used by the companies to train their models, the next generation. However, some of these companies have enterprise versions that they explicitly state that they're protecting your information. If you use a cloud service for document management, a lot of them have the same privacy protections in place that the AI models with the enterprise version have. So you can kind of be safe, feeling like, okay, I use Google Drive to store my documents. If I have the enterprise version of Google Gemini and I read the terms and conditions and it's similar, do I feel comfortable using Google Gemini and uploading documents, medical records, things like that, to use their AI version? It's a question that each attorney kind of has to go through the ethical analysis that their state has to determine if they feel comfortable doing it or not. I would say, you can play with the free versions of these tools, but when you're using them for case specific research, or you're uploading, client confidential information, you obviously don't want to use the free versions of these tools at all. The other thing is proficiency. Proficiency is really important. The American Bar Association, their model rules of professional conduct require attorneys to maintain the level of competence, which includes, and the model rules say that staying abreast of changes in the law and its practice, including the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology. So I really do feel, I think this is really important, that it's our ethical duty as attorneys to learn about artificial intelligence and try to understand artificial intelligence, just like it would be, an ethical violation of an attorney to go to use a law library and charge a client, 6 hours of time for research, when you could go online and use Lexis or Westlaw and find the cases to support your argument in a matter of 10 minutes. That's an ethical violation. You need to be aware of the technology that's available out there and use it. And so in the in the same vein, I think at some point, we're not there yet, but at some point, I think that attorneys will be expected to use data-driven techniques, artificial intelligence, machine learning in their practice, just like we're now almost required to use, legal research, online legal research in assisting us in researching topics and issues for our clients. I think at one point, it's going to be, an ethical violation to draft a contract and charge a client, 4 hours or 8 hours to do it when AI could have done it in minutes, and we're almost to that point. So it's something to consider, especially for attorneys who are involved in hourly billing. How do you work that out? Is that model going to go away? Those are things that people are thinking about now as we become more efficient in these tasks. The other thing is you really need to be careful about AI and its accuracy and truthfulness, right? There was attorneys who got in trouble. Everyone knows the story now. These guys, they used fake cases because they relied on artificial intelligence, and they produced a brief to the court, submitted a brief to the court, and there were fake cases in the brief. Mm-hmm. So the way I treat artificial intelligence is just like a first-year associate, someone who just got out of law school. I provide them a legal task to write a brief. You don't just blindly rely on what they did and submit it to the court. They're new at this. They're learning. They may not have correctly cited cases, or they may, there may be mistakes. And so it's really important that attorneys check the precision of the output from these models and make sure that it's accurate and truthful, especially when we're submitting filings to the court. And for legal, I talked about kind of like legal adjacent type tasks, but for legal research and drafting, it's really important that attorneys use tools that are built on top of knowledge bases of case law and regulation. So, for example, Lexis AI, Westlaw I think is associated with Case Text now, and those tools are actually built on top of knowledge base of cases and case law and legal specific data, so that you could rely on the accuracy a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But so that's important to make sure that you understand that those tools are probably better for legal research and drafting at this time. Things might change, but I would be very careful about that.
To turn the corner a little bit, I know that there are limitations in a lot of practices out there in this country, primarily just due to a limited understanding of technology and what's available, but maybe even also just a resistance to it. So I'd love to hear your feedback, having boots on the ground in a wildly successful PI and work comp firm there in Nevada. What have you learned in terms of the encouragement, the training component, the embracing of this technology within a law firm operation?
That's a great question. So something that my partner, Sean Glide, he always says is us as attorneys, we're commodities. And, in the sense that, we really need to invest in ourselves as commodities in training and learning. There's a lot of attorneys out there who, don't go to, they do the very bare minimum in improving themselves and making themselves, a valuable commodity. Maybe they don't listen to podcasts like yours. They don't go to legal conferences where they can learn, the cutting edge of whatever area they're in, whether it's litigation and trial work like what we do, or, the business side of things or transactional. There's so many great resources out there. And you really need to think of yourself as a commodity, and you need to improve yourself every day. You need to be actively involved in, legal technology, because whether you like it or not, it's going to have a huge impact on the industry coming up in the next few years. And, it's hard to imagine what it's going to be like. And before you know it, in a few years, we may have artificial general intelligence and super intelligence. We may have AI that's smarter than most attorneys. Recently, ChatGPT, GPT-4, passed the bar exam, and it did better than 90% of all of the bar examinees that took the bar exam. It's incredible how quickly this is developing. So you just need to focus on improving yourself. a lot of times you just kind of, attorneys, for whatever reason, we don't like change. And it's probably because we're built on a system of precedent. And, if you want to understand how the law is going to be applied today, you look in the past at what was done in the past. But, also, there's a great opportunity coming up with these changes and artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I think that we really need to be focused on that and improving ourselves and going to conferences, listening to podcasts, reading as much as you can about these developments, because it is going to have a big impact on the law.
All sound advice, Tom. I've thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, I had the privilege of being able to speak with you there a few months ago around this topic, and I can see how much you enjoy embracing this technology and experimenting with it for the betterment of your clients and your firm. And like I said earlier, I applaud you for that. And I know our listeners are grateful for you taking time to share your insights. I hope to have you back in the future. I'm curious, any other final thoughts or things you would have wished I would have asked you while we were on the talk today?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I know we kind of were going to address marketing real quick, and I know that's your area. And I do want to just say one thing about marketing. I have really found that it's been helpful in my marketing practice. I put out a newsletter every month, and it's hard to come up with topics. And it's been really helpful to just kind of be a tool for brainstorming article ideas. I wanted to write an article about the World War II bomber pilots and the Flying Fortress, and I didn't really know that much about it, so I used Anthropic Claude to kind of help me understand it, draft a rough outline of the article that I wanted to put out there, and it's been really good as like a writing assistant. So I think you probably have more to say about that. You have to be really careful about just like copying and pasting what it gives you, because obviously for me it's very important that it's in my own voice, because I've been doing this newsletter for many years. But when I get writer's block, it helps. It helps me with my grammar. It helps me develop a story. So I found it's been a really useful tool in marketing too, just kind of getting my newsletter out there and helping me cut down on the time it takes to come up with an outline and develop an article every month or 2 or 3 or 4.
I love that you brought that up, because you're right. That's one of the more common frustrations for a marketer is running out of new creative ideas and the whole ideation process. And you referenced this type of technology is essentially a virtual assistant earlier. You may have used the term personal assistant, but it's the same in marketing. It's having essentially another, I'll say, person to bounce ideas off of, to ideate around specific topics. And I've seen your newsletters. You've done a great job with that. And I know, just by doing that, creating that habit and leaning on that technology, you're able to keep your brand of voice out there, creating effective frequency, as we like to call it in the marketplace, to where your knownness is, as high as it can possibly be, which is marketing. That is marketing. So absolutely, I encourage listeners to leverage this technology for that concept. And just, Tom, as you alluded to, certainly do not recommend just pulling content straight from ChatGPT or other tools like that and putting it on your website, because you do want to avoid any kind of AI generated content. Right now, we've seen some major website hits of law firms across the country who have leaned on that type of strategy for a few months, and now they're paying for it. So I think that is a good word of caution. Yeah,
the interesting thing about AI is it's great at generating content, but it's also great at identifying other AI generated content, So you bet Google has, their models are out there searching for AI generated content. Like you said, you're gonna get dinged for it. So make sure it's in your own voice, like you were saying, and it's your own work, but use it as an assistant. Sure.
Tom, thanks again. For listeners interested in finding you, reaching out to you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so reach out on LinkedIn. You can just put my name in there, you'll find me. And then feel free to email me directly, Tom@ClaggettLaw, ClaggettLaw.com. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to talk about this topic. I find it fascinating, and I'm happy to spend time with anyone kind of going over best practices.
I recommend you all take him up on that. Tom's a world of knowledge. So thank you for this, Tom. Looking forward to the next run at this.
Thank you, Tanner.
Take care. Bye-bye.
LAWsome by Consultwebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next LAWsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.